Every wordless melody in our tradition tells a story. The beauty of a wordless melody is that the story is up for you to tell within yourself. So whatever story you want to tell as you're singing and hearing these sounds, please tell yourself a beautiful story right now. A story of love and a story of peace, a story of harmony between all peoples in the world. The world needs your story right now. Would you join me? Here we go. Bruchim Habayim, welcome everybody. Tonight is the culmination of a 2-year study program in what we call Magid training. The Magid is the same root of the word Haggadah, that we tell the story of the Exodus from Egypt every Passover. And a Magid is somebody in Eastern Europe who is an itinerant preacher. And Devora will be telling us a little bit more as you come up now and welcome everybody. But I just want to really welcome everybody who've come to support these Magidim, Magidot, who've worked for 2 years very intensively to learn Torah and to learn the stories of our tradition. Indigenous people with connected to land, always love stories, whether it's in Africa or Australia or Native Americans. Stories somehow go beyond the mind and reach deeply into the heart. So thank you for coming out for what promises to be a very special concert tonight. So Magida Devora Zaslav, come on up.
Good evening, everybody. This is kind of emotional to be at the end of this 2 years that we've worked together. We had a beautiful graduation ceremony. So these are no longer my students. They're Magidim. They're real storytellers, Torah teachers, and all of that. So I'm not even going to be emceeing this concert. This is the last you're going to see of me. I'm just going to introduce the first introducer. But I have to tell a tiny story. So Reb Zusha, who was a disciple of the Baal Shem Tov, is very famous. But in his most famous story, Reb Zusha was about to die, and his disciples were gathered around him, and he was trembling in fear. And they said, Zusha, what are you afraid of? And he said, I'm afraid to meet God. He said, Zusha, you have nothing to fear. You are a great Torah teacher. You are a great human being. You're like Moses. You're like Abraham. And he said, I'm not afraid that God's going to ask me, why weren't you like Moses? Why weren't you like Abraham? I'm afraid God will say, were you really, really Zusha? Now, why am I telling you this? Because each of these 7 storytellers tonight is completely different. If I have succeeded in 2 years in teaching them to tell stories, they will not tell stories like me. Each one of them will have discovered their own style. They have learned to find the stories that call to them, the stories that want to be told by them, and hopefully they've learned to be the unique vessel for whichever story they're telling. So I am about to introduce Stephanie, who is going to introduce Ayala, and then each teller who tells is going to introduce the next teller, and I know it's going to be a wonderful evening.
So you may wonder why the circuitousness of that, and that's because I come last, so I have to introduce the first. so the last comes first. And we said we would say a little bit about each other, something we really loved, and Ayala was the easiest person to get because when we first started the program, we came for a first class. We'd had no teaching, nothing, nada, nothing. And Debbie said, just create a little story, 4-minute story, and you're just going to tell it to 3 or 4 others, and you don't have to be good, don't worry about it. So we came in, and the 3 or 4 of us did ours, and then Ayala got up, walks over to the wall, picks up a little drum, tucks it under her arm, starts drumming, then she starts singing, and then she goes into this amazing story, and then she finished, and she's weaving us in like, oh, sing with me, please, and then she goes back, and then at the end she drums, and she sings some more, and she finishes this story, and our jaws are on the floor, and because we know she sort of has a little back door into Rabbi David and Devora, we said, did you get Devora to tutor you already? And she said, no. And Devora came in and we said, did she get you to tutor her already? And Devora said, no. And we just went, Ayala was born a storyteller. And we're so glad that she has found who she is. So this is Magida Ayala Sonnenschein.
Good evening. So there's a few stories that we're going to be telling tonight. You did. That are about the Baal Shem Tov. He was a rabbi that lived in the 1700s in Eastern Europe, and he is the father of Hasidism, who brought back the joy and the love into the Jewish tradition that people had lost sight of. So my story is also about the Baal Shem Tov. Yai dai, yai da da dai, yai dai dai, ya da 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 dai, yai dai, ya da da dai, yai dai dai dai. Once, the Baal Shem Tov invited some of his students to journey to Pozno for Shabbos. The youngest of his students had actually been born and raised there and was very excited about seeing his family. They piled into the wagon, and as soon as they did, the Baal Shem Tov instructed his driver to drop the reins and allow the horses to lead the way. So they journeyed through the night, and the next morning the horses came to a stop at a path winding through a field. The Baal Shem Tov instructed the driver to get some water from the well that was hidden among the tall grasses. The young man was worried. Well, if we don't hurry up, we're going to spend Shabbos in this field instead of in Pozno. We will be in Pozno for Shabbos. The driver returned with the water. The Baal Shem Tov offered a blessing, and they all drank and continued on their way. Some hours down the road, again the horses stopped, this time in front of a shack at the edge of a wood. The young man was anxious again. Well, why are we stopping here? It's almost sunset, and we'll never make it in time to see my parents in Pozno. This time the Baal Shem Tov didn't even reply. He stepped out of the wagon, and as he did, an old leper appeared. They embraced like old friends, and they disappeared together into the shack for what seemed like a very long time as the young man counted the minutes. Then the Baal Shem Tov reemerged out of the shack, continued with the other travelers on their journey. Now, just as the young man was giving up all hope of reaching Pozno, he suddenly recognized the familiar buildings of his town, and he imagined the delight in his parents' faces when they would see him at the door. But just then, the wagon turned in the opposite direction of his parents' house, and the horses pulled to a stop in front of a small stone house. Out came a tailor, waving his hands frantically. "What are you doing here? Don't you know Jews are not welcome here? Only those who live and work in this area can be safe. Go away before anybody sees you and you will be attacked." "May we spend Shabbos with you? I promise nothing will happen, not to you and not to us." Well, the tailor completely calmed down and invited them in for Shabbos. That evening, everybody gathered around the table, and the Baal Shem Tov led them in beautiful, deep, heartfelt prayers and songs, and they davened, and they swayed, and they carried the energy of Shabbos. And suddenly, this angry man burst through the door. "I heard there are Jews here. Out with you!" The host was terrified and hid his eyes in fear. But just then, this man looked at the Baal Shem Tov, who had not stopped singing. Yai dai, yai da da dai. Yai dai dai, yai da 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 dai. Yai dai, yai da da dai. Yai dai dai dai. The man felt himself drawn into that nigun, that wordless melody. His body softened and he began to sway, and then he joined them. Ya dai 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 ya da 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 dai ya dai ya da da dai ya dai 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 ya dai dai ya da da dai dai ya dai dai ya da da dai dai ya dai 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 ya dai 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 dai. As they began to eat their dinner, the Baal Shem Tov offered these words. One's soul, one's neshama, is brought down to earth to fulfill its divine mission. It can be something as simple as doing a favor for a friend, a neighbor, or even a stranger. Well, the man was mesmerized by the Baal Shem Tov's teachings. But at the end of Shabbos, he quietly slipped out the door. And the Baal Shem Tov and his students got back in their wagons to head to Medzebush. Now, the young man still had some questions. "Well, I don't understand. We never got to see my parents. Why did we have to stop at that well and visit the old leper? And why did we have Shabbos with that old tailor in that awful neighborhood?" The well was the place where 2 Jews had been murdered years ago. Their souls could not ascend until a blessing was said to cleanse the air. And the old leper, every generation has one soul that comes down to redeem the world if we are worthy. That leper is that soul. And he was about to depart this world. And I knew he longed to see me. I had to go see him before Shabbos. "Well, then why did we go spend Shabbos with the tailor?" But with that, the Baal Shem Tov quietly left. Some years later, the young man traveled to Germany on business, and he arrived in a town on the evening of Shabbos, and he asked around as to who might host him. Everybody pointed him in the direction of Reb Shlomo and his wife. They were renowned for loving to have guests at their Shabbos table. He was warmly welcomed into their bare, meager house, but their table for Shabbos was laden with a warm challah fresh from the oven, fragrant chicken soup with knedlach, and roasted beef with all the trimmings. The rabbi's wife said the blessings over the Shabbos candles, and they began to pray and daven, and the young man was so taken by the depth of the rabbi's teachings. Now the next day, at the third meal, when Shabbos was almost over, the rabbi offered these words. One's soul, one's neshama, comes down to this earth for the purpose of fulfilling its divine mission. It can be something as simple as doing a favor for a loved one, a friend, even a stranger. At that moment, the young man's eyes met the eyes of Reb Shlomo, and they both remembered that magical Shabbos with the Baal Shem Tov in Pozhno. Reb Shlomo said, "Yes, I was that man, and I had left my people. I had left my traditions years before. But that Shabbos, the Baal Shem Tov, stirred something so deep inside of me. My soul was churning, and I knew that I had to return to my people. And now I am the rabbi of this town." Thus the young man learned the secret of his magical Shabbos in Pozhno with the Baal Shem Tov. I bless us all to be able to see the miracles that happen around us at any moment, and to receive the guidance for our neshama's purpose for being here. Thank you. So our next teller, Glenn Hill, will also be sharing a story of the Baal Shem Tov. It happened to be one of our assignments in our 2-year program. And we kept looking, but yeah. So Glenn is a storyteller in his heart. He has embraced this tradition with everything, his music, his song that he loves to share in his stories. And he shares the stories of our tradition in such a beautiful way. I would like to welcome Glenn Hill.
Sometimes when we focus on details in trying to be perfect, we lose sight of the heart of the matter, of what is most important. Now the young Israel ben Eleazar, who would become the Baal Shem Tov, the master of the holy name, when he was still studying with his teacher, had become very, very anxious about if he was following the laws of Shabbat, in particular, the day of rest, the Sabbath, and if perhaps even breaking of the challah bread was work, or eating, chewing the bread was work. And so he went to his teacher to ask a question. "Master, can you show me the one who keeps Shabbat most perfectly?" "Yes, I may, and I will give you the holy name that will speed you on your journey." So Israel got his horse and wagon set up and got on board and dropped the reins. And with the holy name, his horse flew over mountains and valleys and lakes and rivers. And even with this holy name, the journey took many, many days. Finally, at eve of Shabbat, his horse entered a very large, strange foreign city and stopped before a house. And Israel got up to knock on the door. He noticed there was no mezuzah on the doorsill. And when the man answered, he was not wearing a yarmulke. "May I spend Shabbat with you?" Yes, yes, of course, you are most welcome to stay. When Israel went in, he noticed that there did not seem to be much Jewish about this house. There were no Shabbat candles, and this man said no prayers and no blessings. And he wondered to himself, is this the man that keeps Shabbat most perfectly? Well, that day, Saturday, a great many men and women came to the man's house, friends, and he threw a wonderful party with all kinds of food and drink, and men and women were dancing, and men were smoking cigars, and they were having a grateful time. His host was rushing around, making sure all of these friends were having a wonderful time. And Israel found nothing kosher to eat, so he ate some dry bread that he'd brought and drank some water. Well, discouraged, perplexed, and confused, he got ready to leave on Saturday night. But he asked his host, "Why did you throw that party today?" "Ah, that is a story. You see, I was born a Jew, but I was orphaned when very young, and I was carried a far way to this distant city. And what I recall about being Jewish was my parents would throw a party on Saturday afternoon on Shabbat and have their friends be most happy and just a joyous time. And this is what I know of being Jewish, so I try my very best to be the best Jew I can." Now, Israel wanted to explain all the rules and laws of Shabbat to this Jew, but when he went to speak, his tongue froze in his mouth. And he realized that if he was to try to explain all of this man's native joy and how he served God would be lost, and that he would never be happy the way he was now, and God would not be pleased with his despair in trying to follow everything. So Israel left and went back home. "Master, now may I see the one who keeps Shabbat the worst?" "Yes, you may." This time the journey was very short to a nearby town, and there were many Jews out on the streets getting ready for Shabbat, buying purchases, taking them home, and his horse stopped before a house. He asked a passing Jew, "Whose house is this?" "Oh, that's our rabbi's house." Israel went to the door, and a servant answered. And the rabbi was sitting at his desk, so engrossed in his Torah study that he did not even greet his guest. And when he finally looked up, he assented to Israel spending Shabbat there. Well, this was the worst Shabbat that Israel had ever spent. There was no light, no candles, no heat, no fire, no music, no dancing, no food, and no wine. The rabbi sat in his chair with his arms crossed, afraid to move, afraid to speak, afraid to eat, not moving all of Shabbat. Now Israel wanted to tell the rabbi of the joy that he was missing, but when he went to speak, tongue was frozen. And he realized that if he tried to correct this Torah scholar, his pride would cause great strife, and it would do no good. So he left and went home to his master. "So what have you learned?" "Master, I have learned that God loves the joy in our hearts, and that worry and anxiety bring God no pleasure at all." "Ah, yes. And so may we all be blessed with abundant joy in our hearts." And it's with great joy that I introduce our next storyteller, Magid Daniel Jolkeson, who is a gifted singer, guitar player, storyteller, actor, improv, comedian, and most of all, he has truly mastered the sound.
Good evening. Once, long ago, in Eastern Europe, there lived a rabbi named Yitzhak of Lublin. Now, Yitzhak was a master of the holy books, the Torah, the Zohar, the Talmud, and as well as he was known for his extreme piety and his almost slavish devotion to studying the texts. But no matter how hard Yitzhak studied or how much he followed every single Jewish law to the letter, he was a lonely man. His main friends were his books, and his main home was the Beit Midrash, the study hall in the synagogue. Now, at that time in Lublin, there were many Hasidim, the followers of Rabbi Israel ben Eliezer, the Baal Shem Tov, who called him the Besht. And the Besht was known for his songs, his stories, his teachings about ordinary people connecting to God through ordinary acts in their lives. And this enraged scholars and rabbis, people of great learning, like Rabbi Yitzhak. And the more Yitzhak's opposition to the Besht grew, the more he began to crave a face-to-face meeting with the Besht to challenge him. So one day he packed a bag and slung it over his shoulder and began the 2-week journey on foot from Lublin to Medzebush, where the Besht was living. When he arrived, the Besht greeted him warmly. "Ah, Rabbi Yitzhak, very nice to see you. Please, have a seat. Here's some water. How are you? Is your family? How is your study of Torah going?" "Oh, I thank you very much for all that hospitality, but I have a bone to pick with you, Rebbe Eliezer." "Oh, okay. Please, don't spare me any criticism you have. Go ahead. After all, if we two people can't get together and seek the truth together through debate, then what is the point of our meeting?" Yes, fine. Listen, my point is, I've been hearing things in Lublin about you. They say that you claim to possess some special knowledge of the mysteries of life and Torah that you've plucked from heaven, and that using the intellect to study the Torah and so forth is useless. Now, if this is true, if what I hear is true, then this goes against everything our rabbis have been telling us all these years. And you are either a heretic or deluded or arrogant or all three. I don't know. Which is it, Rebbe Eliezer? The Besht said, "Listen, Rebbe Yitzhak, I don't possess any special knowledge. All that I teach comes down to this, that God fills the earth, that God is within each of us, and that if we seek God's presence, we will feel it." "Yes, but you seek God's presence through study, through the books, through the prayers. What other way is there?" "Oh, Rabbi Yitzhak, listen, you and I both know the average Jew does not have time to sit and study. They're working hard all day to support their families. They're tired and hungry and just trying to live. Most Jews can't even read Hebrew. So does that work for them? No. Holy people, they can be sages, they could be shoemakers, tailors. Any person who is holy inside is filled with the state of devekut, that intense God consciousness where everything that they see is filled with a divine purpose. And all that they hear is their divine inner voice helping them to do the right thing. The only question is, are you listening? After all, even the wise need to listen and learn. All of us have some fault that needs to be fixed. There was a silence. And into that silence came a knock at the door. The Besht answered, and there stood a wizened old peasant. Excuse me, Rebbe Eliezer, pardon my interruption. I am a cooper. I'm just wondering, do you have any buckets or barrels that you need to be fixed? I am an expert at my trade. I'm happy to help. Oh, thank you, my good man. No, I'm sorry. Everything is in good shape, but thank you for checking. No, please, really, look carefully. I am sure that there is something that needs fixing. I'll be back later to check on you. He left. The Besht turned back to Reb Yitzhak and said, do you see that? That was no accident. That man was here to remind us of what we were just talking about. The call of a bird, the words of a peasant, they are all from the mouth of God. They are all as sacred as words of Torah. All you have to do is listen. What is God saying to you? And what are you going to do about it? Oh, that's ridiculous. Random words from a stranger who comes off the street? 1,000 holy rabbis would shout you down. I mean, that no one talks that way. I cannot accept this belief. You can accept it. You can, said the Besht. You don't want to. And with that, the rabbi left, stormed out of the house, fuming. He ran down the street. After a while, he began to calm down. But his mind was still turning over the events that had just happened when he saw a peasant weeping on the side of the road. Please, he said as the rabbi approached, can you help me? My cart has turned over, the rocks all over the road. I have to deliver these rocks to the market by sundown or for this contractor, and I will lose my business if I don't get there on time. Please help me. Oh, I'm sorry. I can't, said Rabbi Yitzhak. I'm too weak. You can! You can! You just don't want to, said the peasant. Rabbi Yitzhak stopped. Then he shook himself, and he rushed over to the peasant and tried to help him. When he couldn't help him, he rounded up some passersby, and together they righted the cart, helped him pick up the rocks, and sent him on his way. Rabbi Yitzhak rushed back to the Baal Shem Tov and told him what had happened. The Besh said, twice in one day, you have seen divine purpose in action. The first time, you ignored it. The second time, you listened and you acted. And the poor man got help when he needed it the most. He was your messenger, but you were his messenger too. Do you see how the world works? Well, Reb Yitzhak left the Besh's house and returned to Lublin, but he was not the same person. Gone was his arrogance and his pretentiousness. And over the years, he developed the art of listening to a fine craft and was able to act and respond whenever anyone in his community needed him. And because of that, he was no longer lonely. So, may we all be blessed to pay attention and listen to the signs, to the miracles and the messages that are happening to us. And may we together fix the world. Thank you. Well, our next teller is Rivka, and the way that this program has worked is that we choose a story on our own, then we practice a little bit, and then we schedule time with another student, and we practice together in somebody's house, and then we get together and Skype with Devora and practice with her, get feedback, then we go to the class, do it for the class, then we do it for you. So Rivka was my first practice partner before I ever Skyped with Devora or did anything, and I still remember that because she had this hilarious story, and she just has such amazing presence. You'll see, this is going to be on a lighthearted note, this story, and she's got great timing, great presence, just wonderful characters, and I always enjoy listening to her. So, Rivka Ravenwood.
Thank you, Daniel. So, I'm not going to tell a Baal Shem Tov story. It's kind of a different sort of Baal Shem Tov. This is called Elevator Master Class. This feels really low. Okay. I was taking a nap when the phone call came. Hello? The voice on the other end was very bright. Hi! This is Kathy Hood. And this is my favorite part of my job. We only accepted 5 women this year. It is my honor to offer you a place in the upcoming class of the Juilliard School of Drama. Okay, great. Thank you. Bye. My mom got home and I said, Mom, I think maybe I got into Juilliard, but I think maybe I dreamt it, because that's crazy. That just doesn't happen. So to a few agonizing weeks I waited. I didn't tell anyone until the letter arrived. Juilliard, my dream. I had just gotten the golden ticket. In my naive little 21-year-old mind, I was heading for the chocolate factory. I was heading for fame. I was in the liminal space between me and Judi Dench. I was going to make a living doing Shakespeare in theaters as large as sports arenas with thousands and thousands of screaming people. So excited about Shakespeare. I had a lot to learn. So, my story begins when I was still in the honeymoon phases with this wonderful school. It was in my winter break, halfway through my first year, still in love. But there was some darkness trickling in underneath it. So my plane landed, and the snowdrifts were taller than the cars, and I made my way back to school. The cab driver stopped in front of the Lincoln Center and said, "Lady, you cannot get out here. You are insane. Nobody lives here." I do. I live here, I promise. Nobody lives in the Lincoln Center. What, are you out of your mind? I'm not going to let you out. I let you out, you'll go sit there in your delusional little girl world, and you will die. This argument went on for quite some time. He would not let me out of the cab. Look, mister, you go straight ahead. You pass the Philharmonic. You pass the ballet. You go toward the Met. You turn right. You go past see that fountain there? You go past the fountain. You go up on the plaza. You go, there's Juilliard. You turn to the left. There's a School of American Ballet. On the 9th floor, I'm on the 11th. You want to walk me home? Finally, after the argument just would not see an ending, he slammed his way out of the car in a silent fury. He took my bags out of the trunk and he dropped them in the snow like a father renouncing his child. He would not take a tip because I was going to die, and nothing short of kidnapping me was going to save my life. Bye. Oh, New York City. I didn't even take my bags to the dorm. I took them straight to the school, dropped them in the lobby. My love, I'm home. Some darkness was coming in, though, because, you see, I was very shy. My teachers had been saying, "Rebecca, you know, you're the female James Dean of our class." What does that mean? "But when you walk into a room, you disappear. Rebecca, you're just too British. You're too polite. Learn to be bitchy." I'm not kidding, I said this. Or one teacher who actually loved me, and I loved her. "Rebecca, you remind me of Jane Eyre." Jane Eyre. So, but inside I had this wee free man, a little Scottish man, a little blue man in a ragged kilt with red hair, and he would scream at me, "Do this, say that, you're too quiet." He would dance a mad hornpipe inside my belly and tell me to speak. And so I was heading into my school to find a practice room and fix myself so that I could fit with my love. Oh, the gray carpets with the red triangles on them. The red furniture with the fake chrome legs. The heat coming through the heating vents, smelling faintly like goat. Oh, my love, New York City, Juilliard, I love you, please accept me. And so I pushed the elevator door button. I got politely in my little Bronte-esque way. And the doors began to close, and bam! A strong hand in a nondescript gray suit blocked the door, and in past the hand leapt Mikhail Baryshnikov. The bodyguard followed him in and promptly disappeared against the wall. I guess they teach them that in bodyguard school. To all intents and purposes, I was alone in the elevator with Mikhail Baryshnikov. Only the greatest dancer that ever lived in my mind. This man was not just on a pedestal in my world. He had achieved deity status. My inner, wee, free man was screaming at me, "Push the emergency stop button, woman! How often are you gonna get this opportunity?" Mikhail drifted to the back of the elevator and settled, slumped a little, with a little frown between his eyebrows. I think it was that frown that was responsible for what happened next. "Woman, you've got to say something. You're never going to get this opportunity again." My wee free man would not shut up. So, excuse me, sir. Would you tell me how you break free of gravity? How do you leap so high and so free? My longing to break free of the gravity that hung its weight on my tongue and kept me silent came up and choked me, and I couldn't say any more. He didn't say a word. He didn't even look at me. The elevator ride was really long. Tick-tock, tick-a-rock, tick-tock, tick-tick-rock went my naive, shy, mortified 21-year-old heart. This is going to be my most embarrassing moment. When people at parties ask you what your most embarrassing moment was, this is going to be it. But I don't know if I'll ever be able to speak again, ever. The elevator stopped. It wasn't my floor. Door opened. Bodyguard went out, checked the hallway. And that was it. He was leaving. He was going. But then he stopped. And he turned to me. And I couldn't help but notice he wasn't slumped anymore. He was drawn up to the full 5 foot whatever height. And a smile bloomed on his face. A smile that would for decades until now ruin me for dating. And he said to me, "When I leap, I do not think about the ground." And then he smiled again, and with a little twinkle, he hopped, and he was gone. When I leap, I do not think about the ground. That message is still resonating with me. It wasn't about fame, as I had thought. It was about living an authentic life and allowing my awkward, sometimes too loud, sometimes silent voice to be loved and be free. And I'm still learning what it means really. But this is for my fellow Magidot and Magidim. As your journey takes you forward in whatever form your practice takes, leap and do not think about the ground. Thank you.
I'm here to provide the musical interlude. It's another lighthearted offering. This one's kind of a story and kind of Jewy. Okay. When I tell you that I love you, don't test my love. Accept my love. Don't test my love. 'Cause maybe I don't love you all that much. And don't ask me what kind of music I'm gonna play tonight. Just stay a while, hear for yourself a while. And if you must put me in a box, make sure it's a big box, one with lots of windows and a door to walk through and a nice hot chimney, so we can burn, burn, burn everything that we don't like. Watch the ashes rise up to heaven, maybe all the way to India. I'd like that. All the ancient kings came to my door. They said, do you want to be an ancient king too? I said, oh yes, very much. But I think my timing's wrong. They said time is relative. Or did you misread Einstein? I said, do you really mean that? They said, what do you think we come here for? Our goddamn health or something. Everybody's waiting for the Messiah. Jews are waiting, Christians are waiting, also the Muslims. It's like everybody's waiting. They've been waiting a long time. I know how I hate to wait, like even for a bus or something, an important phone call. So I can just imagine how darned impatient everybody must be getting. So I think it's time now, time to reveal myself. I am the Messiah. I am the Messiah. I am the Messiah. Yes, I think you heard me right. I am the Messiah. I was gonna wait till next year, make it a really big surprise, but I just could not resist. It's like when you got a really big secret and you're just bursting to tell someone. Well, it was kind of like that with this. And now that I've told you, I feel this great weight lifted. Dr. Nussbaum was right. He's my therapist. He said, get it out in the open. I spent 10 whole days in Jerusalem. Jerusalem, sweet Jerusalem. And all I ate was olives, nothing but olives, mountains of olives. It was a good 10 days. I like olives. I like you too. So when I tell you that I love you, don't test my love. Accept my love. No, don't test my love. So, 'cause maybe I don't love you all that much. Thanks.
That's a great introduction, too. To our next seller, I have a quote about her, actually, by Rebbe Nachman. Joy is not incidental to the spiritual quest, it is vital to it. Our next teller is absolutely one of the most joyous and lovely people I have ever met. She has this amazing gift, and she's had it from the beginning, to go up to Torah and do a devar, and it just draws you in. She never writes it down, ever. And she draws you in, and you're just so enthralled and entertained, and she spreads this immense love and joy she has for Torah. Marcia, Reb Magida. I just called you Reb Marcia. Reb Marcia. Magida, Marcia Chaikin.
Shalom Aleichem. An allegory by Reb Nachman. And if you listen for the clues, you may figure it out. Once there was a king who was wise, merciful, and gracious. But oh my God, did he have a temper! One day, his favorite daughter came to him, Princess Serena, and said, "Father, I have met the most wonderful prince, and we're going to get married." And the king thundered, "You will marry whom I say you'll marry. You, go to the devil." And as soon as the words were out of his mouth, he wanted to grab them and put them back, because he knew that when there are angry words, Satan is lurking around waiting to hear them. And sure enough, Satan swooped down, grabbed Princess Serena, and poof, they disappeared. Now the king was heartbroken. He loved Serena more than anyone else in the world, and he offered an enormous reward for anybody who could find his beloved Serena. Many looked. None could find her. But the prince who Serena loved, who loved Serena, came and said, "I will look for her until I find her or I die. I don't want a reward. All I want is your blessing that we can marry." And the king said, "Of course, I will perform the marriage myself." And the prince searched all over the world to the very edge of human habitation. And when he reached the border between the land of humans and giants, he fell asleep. And in his sleep, he had this dream that his beloved Serena was in a golden palace on a crystal mountain waiting for him. And when he woke, it was so real, he knew it had to be true. And he put one foot over into the land of the giants, and he heard, "Fee, fi, fo, fum, human, who are you?" And the prince looked at the giant and told the giant, his story about Serena in the golden palace on the crystal mountain. And the giant, who had a very angelic heart, said to the prince, "I rule over all the animals. We will call a representative of all of them, and maybe they will have seen the palace." All of the animals came together and had a great discussion with cheeps and snorts and all of the oinks that the animals make. And finally the lion roared, "Human, no such palace. Go home." The prince said, "Serena is my heart. I will never give up searching for her." And the giant said, "Maybe my sister who rules the birds will know something." And he called his sister, and his sister came flying in with all of the birds. And the prince told them the story, and the birds, with tweets and whistles, had this great discussion, and one voice said, "Oh, golden palace, crystal mountain." But it was only the parrot who repeats everything he hears. And the prince was so discouraged. But The giantess said, "Wait, our other brother rules the winds. We'll call him." And the giant who rules the winds came blowing in and said, "What do you want?" And the prince told him the story, and the giant said, "I'll call all the winds together." And he called them, and they came whooshing in. And the prince told them the story, but they had never heard of the palace. And the prince's heart was about to break when this little breeze came blowing in, and the giant said, "Late again? What's your excuse this time?" "Well," said the little breeze, "I was just about to leave, and Satan called me to carry a princess to a golden palace on a crystal mountain. And there was great rejoicing of the giants and the birds and the animals and the winds. And they said, 'Quickly, little breeze, take him to this palace.' But before he left, they gave him 3 gifts. They gave him a bag of coins, a silver key, and a ruby whistle. And then he hopped on the little breeze, who deposited him outside the golden palace. But the palace was very heavily guarded, and the prince thought and said, 'Aha,' took out the bag of coins, bribed the guards, and entered the palace. And as soon as he was in the palace, he felt this evil presence. But if you recognize evil for what it is, it has no power over you. So he was free to wander around the palace until he felt this pure stream of good flowing toward him. And he followed the stream of good to an enormous silver door. It was locked, but he didn't hesitate. He took out the key, he put it in the lock, and he opened the door. And there was Serena, who looked at him and said, "I am so proud of you. You've passed every test to reach me here. But we have 2 more tests we have to pass before we can get married." "What?" said the prince. "First of all," said Serena, "my father has to agree to the marriage." "Check," said the prince, "taken care of." And said Serena, "How are we going to get out of here? Satan will not let us go." And the prince said, "Watch this," pulled out the whistle, blew the whistle, and the little breeze just came in the window. They hopped on the breeze, who took them back to the palace of Serena's father. And except for the rough spots that all couples have, they were married and lived happily ever after. Thank you. This is the hardest introduction to make. We have friends that have a granddaughter that likes to dress like Wonder Woman. This is Wonder Woman in person. She does it all. Andrea Shupek is an amazing wife, mother, chazan, teacher, camp director, friend, and now Magida. Andrea.
have to start my story after I'm like crying. Okay, give me 1 second. Okay. So, how many of you consider yourselves absolutely perfect with no flaws whatsoever? Raise your hands. Oh, we got one brave soul in the front here. How many of you have ever made a mistake in your life? Okay, so it's exactly pretty much what I expected you all to say. But we're approaching Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year. It's a time when we're really taking stock of our lives. We're supposed to do this work called Cheshbon HaNefesh, an accounting of our soul. And we're supposed to look back at all the mistakes that we've made in the past year and try to do better and become a better person for the future. Well, growing up, I really hated this holiday. I found it to be so somber and guilt-ridden, and it just felt like this big weight always being carried around the holiday time. And I didn't understand how people thought of this as a joyous holiday. And there's even this prayer that we say at Yom Kippur where we all stand up and we confess all these sins publicly, and we actually beat our chests. Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Dibarnu Dofi. Ay, 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 ay. And I hated this prayer so much that as a teenager, I would stand there like this, really angry and rigid, and I would refuse to say the words, and I would refuse to beat my chest. And I didn't understand it. Well, this story has helped me to find a new understanding of what we think of our sins and mistakes, and a new understanding of the High Holy Day times. Once there was a king. And this king, like most kings, was very wealthy, and he loved to collect things. And he was very proud of all of these material items that he had acquired. But one item in particular was his most prized possession, and he kept it locked in a little box in his private bedroom where no one else could see it or touch it, and it would be kept safe. And every night before going to bed, he would open that little box and take out this very large, very expensive diamond, flawless and beautiful. And he would turn it around in his hands and admire it until one day, he dropped it on the marble floor. Well, he picked it up and he looked at it, hoping that nothing had happened to it. And there it was. There was a crack right in the center of his once perfect and flawless diamond. Well, he was so distraught, he couldn't believe how careless he had been, and he called all the jewelers from all around the kingdom, offering huge sums of money to anyone who could repair this diamond and remove the crack, this blemish. But unfortunately, despite the reward, all the jewelers had to say to him, "Your Majesty, I'm so sorry, but it's impossible. There's no way to remove the crack in the diamond." Until finally the king could stand it no longer, and he asked his servant to get rid of the diamond. He couldn't bear to look at it anymore. It was too painful. And the servant, realizing it was still very beautiful and valuable, decided to have it put on display in the square where all of the people of the kingdom could see it as they passed by and enjoy its beauty. And one day a stranger was passing through the town, and he noticed this diamond on display. And as he looked at it carefully, he saw the crack in it. And he asked what this was about, and the people told him the story of the king and how he had dropped his most prized diamond. And he sent a message to the king. And his message was that he could fix this diamond. Well, the king saw him at once and said, "How dare you waste my time? All of my jewelers have said it's impossible. How do you intend to fix this diamond?" "Well, Your Majesty, they are right. It is impossible to remove the crack. But if you entrust it to me, I promise that I will return it to its beauty once again. And the king thought, well, even if I lose it, what do I have to lose? So he let the man take this valuable diamond. And the man worked in secret for many days until he finally came back and he presented the diamond to the king. And the king took it in his hands. And he was astonished, for this diamond was more beautiful than it had ever been before. That man had not seen in the crack a blemish. The man had seen the potential for something much more astounding. For where the crack was, he had taken a chisel and so delicately etched more cracks into it. Coming off of that crack were leaves and flowers, and that crack became the stem of a beautiful rose. Well, this stone became the most magnificent and valuable and unique stone in all of the kingdom. And the king was tempted to once again lock it up in his box in his room, but he decided he wanted the world to see this amazing beauty. And he had the servant return it to the display case in the main square. And every day that king would walk by it and admire it and remember how a flaw had made something even more beautiful than it was when it was perfect. So I start to realize that it's not about pushing down our sins and feeling bad about them and trying to get rid of them. It's how we can transform our sins, our mistakes, into something even more magnificent and valuable in the world. And I want to offer you one more understanding of this idea of mistakes. It's been taught that when we are born, we each have a string from us to God. And every time we make a mistake, that string is broken and we're no longer connected to God. But if we transform that mistake, if we do the work and make up for those things, we tie that string back together. And now, because of the knot, that string is shorter. So, with every mistake we make, and every time we do that work, we bring ourselves closer and closer and closer to the divine, allowing us through our mistakes to be able to find closeness and connection to ourselves, to others, and the divine source. And it is my true honor to introduce the next person, because she has been a dear friend for me for many years, and she's even had a weekly date with our son Aiden since he was born, and has come and played and spent time with him every week, which I have really cherished. Stephanie Mead is a beautiful, beautiful, a poet. I don't know why I was blanking. I was saying beautiful poetry. No. She's a poet. She writes beautiful, beautiful poetry. She, I think, is such a beautiful storyteller. I have just admired from day one, really, I have to say, from day one. Even when we were still rough, very, very rough around the edges, I just always found her presence so calm and statuesque and just really, really solid and beautiful. And I've always loved the stories that you've told. And most of all, Stephanie has a beautiful and big heart. Stephanie Mead.
Well, it's hard being introduced by Andrea because they're moving day after tomorrow, and my heart is breaking. But thank you, Andy. So we're called the people of the book. Why are Jews called the people of the book, and what book are we talking about here? And so probably most of you know the book that's generally referred to as the Torah. And some people tend to think of that because part of the world calls it the Old Testament and can think of it as having a lot of laws and things. But it's basically a lot of stories. I mean, we make it sound like sort of the Baal Shem Tov invented something, but he kind of took us back to something because all of what Torah is about is our stories. I mean, you have this guy who talks to a burning bush and, sees through the back of God, and you have women who hear angels, and you have, amazing deception. You ever want to read about deception? You want to read about sex? You got everything in there. Read about food, even this thing called manna that, can be anything that you want in the moment you want it, and we still manage to complain about it. And so this is our Torah. And then we have the Talmud, which, believe it or not, is sort of this extension. And most people know that Jews study the Torah and love to study the Torah, as Marcia has shown us. But a lot of people don't know how passionately so many Jews love to study Talmud. And so, what is Talmud then? Well, in the Jewish tradition, we believe that at Mount Sinai, when the Ten Commandments and the written Torah were given, there was a whole lot of oral Torah also given, that for generations and generations was passed down word of mouth until eventually it was codified and written down. And then, of course, the conversation began, because all the scholars could read it, so they had to talk about it and write down their own thoughts and their own disagreements and agreements, and it's what we do best. And they say, 4 Jews, 6 opinions. And so that all got written down. And so we put those two together, the Mishnah, which is the written oral Torah, and the Gemara, which is the commentary of a few centuries of Jewish scholars. And that is the Talmud, and we consider that all as kind of a whole. This is a story about a young man, a young Jewish secular man, who woke up one morning with a burning desire to study Talmud. And he rushed to his rabbi and said, "Rabbi, I don't know what has come over me, but I have this passionate need to start studying Talmud now." And as Rabbi David can well understand, the rabbi sort of quietly to himself thought, Oy, Rabbono Shalom, why do you do these things to me? I've known this kid since he was born. The heel marks on the carpet getting him to his bar mitzvah we're still working to get him out. A morning minyan, have I ever seen him no. Does he know it? I doubt he even knows any of the prayers. And now you come to me and he says, you bring him, you inspire him to study Talmud? Oy, Gavalt, Rabbono Shalom. Sometimes you make my work hard. And then the other little Rabbono Shalom voice in his head said, but learning is core to who we are as a people, and studying never, ever turn anyone away from the desire to study that is born within them. Now, turning to the young man, he said, wonderful. You want to study Talmud. Oh, good. Well, that is vital. Shall we start now? Oh, yes, Rabbi. Yes, wonderful. All right, then. I am going to ask you 3 questions. First, if 2 men go up a chimney, one comes down dirty and the other comes down clean, who washes? Oh, Rabbi, that's pretty obvious. I mean, the one who's dirty would wash. No. If the dirty man looks at the clean one, he will think he is clean and not wash, while the clean man looking at the dirty man will think he is dirty and he will wash. Second question. If 2 men go up a chimney, one comes down dirty and the other comes down clean, who washes? Rabbi, you just answered that question. I mean, the clean man would wash because he'd see the dirty man and he would think he was dirty. That's what you just said. No. If each man looks down at himself, then the clean man will know he is clean, not wash, while the dirty man will know he is dirty and he will wash. My third question. If 2 men go up a chimney and one comes down dirty and the other comes down clean, who washes?
Okay, Rabbi, I think I'm catching on. It depends on your perspective, right? No. How is it possible for two men to go up a dirty chimney and one to come down clean? They would have to both be filthy. Rabbi, you're driving me crazy here. I mean, I came to you with this genuine desire in my heart to study Talmud, and you're making a joke out of it. No. This is not a joke. This is Talmud. You see, we are the people of the book. Those stories teach us. They have many layers and levels to their meaning. We ask question after question after question. And out of our faith in God, who we know to be far beyond our understanding, we search through our questions and our debate and our dialogue to bring, with the joy in our hearts, a search for God as best we can as human beings. And through all of that questioning and joy, we bring love, which brings us closer to that mysterious God who is our own. And so in all of our searching and all of our questions and all of our debates and all of our answers, may we all come to feel closer to God. So now we have another musical interlude. So would all of the Magidim, Magidot, etc., please come up and stand around us? So, our wonderful teachers, Magida, Devorah, Rabbi David, this is for you. Thank you so much.
I've heard it said that people come into our lives for a reason, bringing something we must learn, and we are led to those who help us most to grow if we let them, and we help them in return. Well, I don't know if I believe that's true, but I know I'm who I am today because I knew you. Like a comet pulled from orbit as it passes the sun, like a stream that meets a boulder halfway through the wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? But because I knew you, I have been changed for good.
It well may be that we may never meet again in this lifetime. So let me say before we part, so much of me is made from what I learned from you. You'll be with me like a handprint on my heart. And now whatever way our stories end, I know you have rewritten mine by being my friend. like a ship blown from its mooring by a wind off the sea, like a sea drop by a sky bird in a distant wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? But because I knew you,
Because I knew you,
I have been changed for good. And just to clear the air, I ask forgiveness for the things I've done you blame me for.
but then I guess we know there's blame to share,
And none of it seems to matter anymore.
like a comet pulled
Like a
from
ship
orbit
blown
as
from
it
its
passes
mooring
the
by a
sun.
wind off the
Like
sea,
a stream that meets
like a
a
sea
boulder
drop by a bird
halfway
and
through the wood.
Who can say
if I've been changed for the better?
I do believe I have been changed for the better.
Because I knew you,
Because I knew you.
because I knew you,
I have been changed for good. Thanks, Mom.
We had the most wonderful graduation ceremony for these guys, but you can tell that they have really, because they knew us, they have learned so much. If you were at their first concert, and it's not just because they knew us, it's because they worked really, really hard. For 2 years, they worked on their storytelling, on their Torah, and it really, really shows. So please give this Magid group another hand. Yes, and thank you for coming, because I always say that storytelling is a contact sport, and there would be nobody to bounce back if you weren't here, because stories reach our hearts, and if your hearts weren't here, there'd be nothing to reach. So thank you so much for coming, and know that even though they've graduated, because they've graduated, they're really just starting out on their journey. We're going to still have lots and lots of storytelling concerts, and we're counting on you to come back and have a good time. Thank you so
Amen.
much.
So now, before we finish, I want to ask everybody to come up in this empty space in the middle and really fill it with our Magidim and Magidot, and we're going to do a little Havdalah service here, okay? So I would love Andrea and Rivka to each, if you would each take a candle, and if I'm just being random here, so don't take it personally who I leave out, okay? And for Daniel to please take the wine, and we have Marcia and Stephanie to please take the bisamin, the spices. And for everybody to come up in the middle, okay? We're all going to stand here. Yeah, light it. Yeah. Great.
Whoa, this is wobbly. Yeah. And I think we light it from my match. I mean, not from my match.
So everybody come closer, okay? Everybody come on in. There you go. So my dear friend and colleague who's here tonight, Rabbi Michael Lerner, really requested this service. And you know, it's like the Baal Shem Tov story, that sometimes when you're really listening, you really hear that there's something below the surface. And so Michael was my angel, my messenger, to say, we're finishing our program and we need Havdalah. We need a separation. It's not just a ritual for the end of Sabbath. We do this every Saturday night. But what Michael's angel was telling me is that if we're going to end this program, let's do it with light. Let's do it with wine. Let's do it with spices, with the beautiful smells. This is Havdalah. It means separation. And we do it on Saturday night to say, we're really going to begin the week anew. And for all our differences that we might have in the world, we're really struggling and working for the same thing. Then Michael and I, the cat, everybody here in the Havurah, want nothing more than the reunion of Ishmael and Yitzchak, the children of Abraham. And we may have different perspectives for that, but you know something? We need each other. Michael and I need each other as brothers because we know we each have a view that comes from God. And in all things in life, when we see things that are really different, we have to learn how to say, vive la différence, because if it weren't for the difference, we'd be a little bit bland. So Rivka and Andrea with the lights, if you'd hold it a little higher. And Daniel, if you'd hold your beautiful cup a little higher. Adonai Hoshia HaMelech Yanenu B'yom Koreinu La Yehudim Hayata Ora V'simcha v'sason v'kan. To our people there is joy, spontaneous joy, and joy that we've planned for the wine. Kein tiheh lanu kos Yeshuot. Esa, this is the cup of our rescue. Uvashem Adonai ekra, over the wine. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Borei puri agafen. For the spices, hold them good and high if you've got a spice in your hand. For the smelling salts that wake us up to the week in front of us. For the week when the world will be changed, because we'll be changed, we'll be different. We'll look at each other with love. We'll see each other as divine messengers. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei bisamim. And if Stephanie and Marcia, you'll take a whiff as you wake it and you'll pass it around. And finally, the fire of our hearts, of our passions. We hold our fingers up to the fire. We see ourselves as we were, as we will be, as we were yesterday, as we're going to be tomorrow. Not to be the same as we were yesterday, but to be transformed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Borei meroei ha'esh. Ay, ay, ay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Amavdil ben kodesh l'cho, ben or l'choshech, ben Yisrael amim. Ben yom hashvi'i l'sheshet yimei hamaseh. You're bound in blessings, Adonai Eloheinu. You make distinctions between Muslims and Jews and Christians, between Buddhists and Hindus, between atheists and Baha'i and all the people of the world, indigenous people all over the world, and we love the differences between us because it's more fun that way. That's what it says in the Hebrew. It's more fun that way. Let's all say it. It's more fun that way. Oh, it's more fun that. Baruch atah Adonai Amavdil ben Kodesh l'cho. Marsha, take a little sip of the wine, please, of the yayin for all of us, and we'll all say, that's good. And whenever you're ready. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi, Bimera v'yameinu, Yavo Eleinu. Mashiach ben David, Mashiach, Miriam the prophetess, in whose hands are strength and song. Miriam will dance, taught us with greatness and the eternal song that we all sing. Lai, 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 lai. Chamocha be'elem Adonai, Chamocha media bakodesh, Norati lot, Osei fele, Osei fele, lai 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 David Melech, Melech Yisrael, David Melech, Melech Yisrael, David Melech, Melech Yisrael, Chai, Chai v'kayam, a Siman, Siman, Siman Tov, U'mazel, Mazel, Mazel Tov, Yehei lanu u'lechol Yisrael, Amen. All the storytellers, please go on in the middle. All the Magidim Magidot, everybody go in the middle. Everybody surround them and get really close to them. Give them a lot of heat now, a lot of love. We really want to bless you that we just made separation, that Debbie and I will never tell you again what to do. I've already lied, I'm sorry. Because we'll continue to give you feedback. And maybe we'll go from tormentors to being real mentors. We'll always be there for you. You'll always be there for us. We'll be there for each other. We really want to bless you to keep telling stories, to keep teaching Torah until you hear your own story told. And when you hear your own story told by someone you love, someone else, you'll know a little bit of your destiny has been fulfilled in the world. But in the meantime, every time you tell a story, there's the chance that somebody is going to hear their own story and you're fulfilling their destiny. And that's really the secret of being a Magid. You're not telling a story because, oh, what a great storyteller you are. You're there to fulfill someone's destiny so that they can hear their own story. And when they weep, when they hear it, then they can laugh because they can go on with their lives. That's what you're telling stories for. So we once again, finally, we want to shower you with blessings. For everybody here, what do you bless them with? As storytellers, we bless you with, call it out. That's right. Amen. You know, Daniel, I was telling your dad before, because he was a Yankee fan, and I was a Brooklyn Dodger fan, that when the Dodgers left Brooklyn, the saddest people in the world were the Yankees, because they needed each other so much. Just like the storyteller needs the audience needs you. And Debbie and I need you so much. We want to thank you for the honor of what you've given us. Amen. So I want to finish to say that there's a little basket out there. And this little basket, if you put $1 or $2 into it, we're going to take them out to Standing Stone. And we're going to buy them French fries and drinks. So it's really true. Yeah. Yeah. Granite Tacos. Really? So everybody, if you put $1, it's going to go to the homeless fund, because Alan Sandler and Sally Rose have just, they own the tap house, and thank you so much. They just bought you all drinks and French fries. Yeah. No, yeah. All 2,000 people here. Okay, thank you. Okay, Granite Tap House, thank you so much, Alan. Yeshikoach. Simon, Tov. You have any more words? Debbie? No? Look, oh, he's right. Amen. Amen. Mazel tov.